Yeah.
There is no universal morality throughout history.
Precisely.
At every point in time, in every different culture, there has been a
Moral
culture
code.
that celebrated something that was considered immoral someplace else. There's no such thing as universal morality. Moral and ethical codes are based off of simple understandings of suffering, acceptable levels of suffering or harm within that cultural context. Okay? The more we understand about how something suffers, how someone suffers, the greater empathy we can have for that person.
And I think it's very neat what you just said. There's no universal. The things we were just talking about are universal, but the codes aren't.
Yeah.
They're culturally.
Well, empathy is a universal emotion.
Yeah.
It's not universal. And by universal, I mean that fundamentally functional adults have it. It's not universally found within all adults. All right. Methodology for salvation purification. I know this sounds like it kind of links into this one a bit, but this is different in that it allows someone like, say you're a Buddhist, is the best example of this. The Buddhists have many tiers and methodologies for purifying themselves. Hindus do it too, except Hindus are way out there. I think of all the religions in the world, Hinduism is one of them.
Well, isn't the Catholic confession an example of that?
Oh, yeah. And that's a very light version of it. Hinduism will literally punish. They're like, have you guys ever heard of flagellants?
That's when you beat yourself, right?
Yes, they were people who would walk around Middle Eastern or middle-aged Europe, and they would beat themselves to a bloody pulp from village to village, trying to remake the Passion of the Christ kind of thing. Okay, and Hinduists tend to do that a lot. The very purest forms of it. They'll do crazy, punishing things to their body, and only because of religion. It's not out of any need for health. It's horrifying. Okay, prescribed doctrine, the template core beliefs. These are the foundational aspects of it. What makes that religion the core centeredness? Like Christianity, what's the core doctrine or template for Christianity?
Jesus.
Well, Ten Commandments would be one, but Jesus would be a main cornerstone.
It was the salvation through Jesus, is that?
Yeah. Basically, what this is that the religion would not be able to function without these.
Yeah.
Okay? These are not the beliefs that can be changed or altered through time. They have to remain stable, otherwise the religious model fractures and breaks down. Okay? One of them is, which I'll touch on again later, is the apple. You know, the old snake in the apple bit? People refer to as a metaphor. But essentially had to happen. People had to have achieved the original sin in Christianity for the old Jesus save liberty play in the back. You know what I mean? Because there would be no reason for Jesus Christ to sacrifice himself if there was no original sin. And if one messes with the other, then the entire thing makes no sense.
You know, one comment I might make on that's kind of interesting that the Bible's very clear about what the original sin is, and that's the knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah,
And
that
yet-
was required from the apple.
And yet the churches build a foundation on proclaiming that knowledge. It's a very
Well,
lax in rationale there.
oh, rationalization, or irrational rationalization plays a big part in religion, and it's moving through the centuries. Sacred holy sites and symbology. Whether it's a symbol like you have very bad sketch, but the Ankh from the Egyptian mythology, cross from Christianity. You know, you have the star for Islam, or you have places like the pyramids of Egypt, or the it starts with K, Karnak in Egypt. It's one of their big places of worship.
Is that a statue or, that's a place? Right?
Oh, pyramid.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for Buddha, it would be the statue?
Yeah. Buddha would be statues of Buddha. Places of peace and things. In Hinduism, the river that they drop their dead into would be a good one.
And then drink out of it.
Bathe in, drink out of, they see it as a cleansing ritual, method of purification. So yeah, it gets really disgusting.
Yeah. I've heard that river's like brown now because just.
Oh,
Well, to be fair, a lot of rivers are actually brown.
Yeah,
People
but I
think
heard
they're
it's like
blue
a
water,
really
but no, it is,
disgusting
yeah.
No, it's filled with rotting corpses.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, if they feel that the person doesn't deserve an afterlife, they just dump them in the river. Normally, they burn the corpses and they dump the ashes. Cremation is really big. Sacred practices and rituals, like Christianity, the eating of the bread and the wine. Have you guys seen the new image of the snack pack, by the way?
What?
They, the Catholic Church came out with the Christ snack pack, and for the Catholics on the go, it is a wafer and a little bit of wine in a little snack pack tray.
Do they just have a priest in the factory just blessing every single one that goes through?
I'm guessing, but you might be able to find it if you look up Jesus
Just think about what that even means, though. That means they think there's literal packages of flesh just sitting on store
Yes,
shelves.
but that ritual is essential to how they function.
You can buy them on Amazon.
You can also buy nuclear bombers on Amazon.
That's it right there. That is the craziest I've ever seen. I mean, I saw that and I was like, okay, that's really freaky. That kind of messed with my brain when I saw that. A friend of mine who, he used to be a priest for 60 years until he quit. He did exorcisms and everything. Finally, he came to the realization. He lives up in Scotland. He came to the realization he was no more. But he sent me that information. Okay. Basically, these are all the things. And that's what makes up the religious template. Okay. Without these fundamentals, you can't really have a religion because they're interdependent upon each other to support. Each specific session supports another one, and vice versa. You understand? Like your moral and ethical code will help support your prescribed doctrine. Your method of salvation purification helps to support the stress relief mechanism and rituals and so on and so forth. Okay, moving on. Hunter-gatherers. Another thing we have to do is understand, because religion basically started with them, the perspective of those guys. And this was taken from a paper that went very in depth into how hunter-gatherers survived. The social hierarchy, ideology, mythology, all this other wonderful stuff. I'm not going to really get into it time. But fundamentally, they were immediate returns culture. They absolutely had to have an immediate return on anything. Whether it be, say there was an event that occurred, like a storm, they had to be able to act immediately. They didn't have infrastructure to prevent flooding, they didn't have a standing police force, they didn't have any science, medical technology, nothing. So they had to act immediately.
Basically, they live like the animals.
Yeah, they had to act immediately to changing environments and needs. Okay, like I just said, no sustainable infrastructure. Nothing that would sustain their culture beyond themselves. They had mediocre tents and houses that we, have dug up at different campsites, found evidence of. But fundamentally, they had nothing that really supported them overall, except for.
But I would say the fact even despite that, they and the animals are very hardy things.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
They have been around
but you have
for
to
millions of
consider
years.
due to the
and
lack
look,
of medical infrastructure. If you were to bring one of them here today, they would live the estimated time that we would. But if we were to go back to their time, we'd probably live about 30 years,
Yeah,
30 to 40 years, because of medical technology. Okay, required adaptive abilities. They had to be able to say, if something dramatic happened within the culture, they had to be able to adapt the culture immediately to the new thing. Like say they had a drought, and their system of food, their resource was gone. They had to be able to adapt their entire culture to that drought. Make it understandable psychologically, make their culture immediately handle it. Okay. Apply a hierarchical system of government. Fastest way to make these three happen is that. In every tribe study that is a hunter-gatherer that exists today, there's a hierarchical system of government.
now do most of them practice marriage?
Oh yeah, there's tribes. It's individualized from culture to culture, but for the most part, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Required constant supply or resupply of resources. Basically, they had no way to preserve their food. Okay. You picked a berry, it was pretty much gone within the next 24, 30 hours. Okay. There was limited storage of meat, depending on where they were at. If they were in a desert region or something like that, they could dry out the food. But for the most part, you're looking at a constant need to resupply the resources about every week to 2 weeks. Okay, so they could stay in a region for about 2, maybe 3 weeks if they were doing well. And then they would have to pick up and move to another one and gather food from that area. Most of them would do like they'd have food here, they'd have food here, they'd have food here, food here, food here, and they'd just go from one section to another. But like I said, if there was a drought in like this spot, and they got there and there wasn't any food, they would have to figure out a way immediately, because like I said, they'd run out of food here, they'd have enough to make it here. By the time they got there, they would expect to find food. If they didn't find food, their system would fall apart. Because they wouldn't be able to provide sustenance, so you have people starving. I don't know if you've ever been around someone that's been starving before, they're not ready, right?
Well, a lot of people are doing it all around us. We're just not around them.
Yeah, well, the point being that the starving people really will not tolerate a lot. I've been one, I understand. They needed psychological sustaining mechanisms. Okay? They needed things that would sustain people through psychological trauma. From death to witnessing tragedy, to witnessing things we didn't understand, like unknowns, like lightning, for example. They required these to maintain a stable culture. Okay, the necessities for survival. Maintaining social integrity. Okay, their culture had to stick together. Okay, what makes up a culture? Society. What we know about it is that you have a bunch of people who have to work together. Okay, to keep the culture going, you have to have people replace the population. Now, everyone has to work together. Otherwise, if these two work against these two, and this guy's alone, this person dies. These two will work against these two. One of these two is going to fade out. Okay. Now, in a cultural setting, when you have this cultural group, this cultural group, this cultural group, this works. And in a single group of 30 to say 60 or 80 people, if you have 15 of them suddenly decide we don't want to work anymore, that's half your resources are gone. Depending on who that is, that could be the person who maintains the food, watches the kids, whatever. If all of you're the people who produce the babies, if all the women say, you know what, we're done. You guys aren't treating us right, we're done. We're done. We're not having babies anymore. Your culture is gone.